So before we start the video, I'd like to ask you guys to please consider subscribing to the channel and liking the video, as it helps the channel grow. So, let's get into it. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It is fight week, and we have a good one coming up this Saturday in Las Vegas in the 175-pound division. The Mexican monster David Benavidez will be taking on the young Cuban superstar David Morrell Jr. for the interim WBC light heavyweight championship of the world. In this video, I'm going to give my overall review of this fight. I'm going to go down each fight of the main card, give my predictions for each one. This will be a new style of video that I am trying. This is a video that will kind of cut down on some of the editing that's needed and just be a raw discussion about boxing. I am very excited for this fight, and I hope you guys are as well. So if you can give me a little bit of time of your day to talk about the fights on the card, how you guys can watch the fights and where, and yeah. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's get into it. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for having the time to spend with me this video. Today, we're doing boxing. The 175-pound division has seen a shakeup in recent years. Lots of talented fighters up there. None more talented than the two fighters we have fighting on Saturday this week. David Benavidez, the Mexican monster, will be taking on David Morrell Jr. for the WBC light heavyweight championship of the world, or at least the interim title. David Morrell Jr. has been asking for this fight with Benavidez for probably years now, and these are the type of fights that everybody wants in boxing. David Benavidez answered the call, and it seems like we're going to have a great fight on our hands come Saturday. So I just wanted to hop on for a minute and talk about some of the fights on the card, and give my overall prediction on what I think is going to happen in the main event as well. But before I get into that, I want to give you guys a little bit of precursors on how you can watch the fight, where you can watch it, and what time the fighters might be expected to make their ring walks. So on Saturday, February 1st of 2025, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, in T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, Nevada, David Morrell and David Benavidez will be meeting up in the ring. They'll probably be making their ring walks maybe around 9:30, 10 o'clock if you're living on the east. I'd say about maybe like 12 midnight on Eastern time. If you live in the central, you'll probably be seeing about 10:30. If you live in the West Coast, you'll probably be seeing maybe around 7:30ish. So that's when they'll be making their ring walks, at least I think. Considering if we have a long card on our hands, which we definitely do. If you guys want to watch the fight, it's available on PPV pay-per-view on Prime Video. It's also available on payperview.com. You can watch it in person if they still have tickets available, or there's always sports bars around where you can watch the fight, and they'll definitely be happy to show the fight at sports bars. So now that that's all out of the way, we can get into the fights that are scheduled on the card. Now, I'm not going to worry about the prelims in this episode. There are some good fighters that are going to be on the prelims. One fighter that I would beg you guys to watch on the prelims would be Kermel Moton. He will be taking on Frank Zaldivar. Kermel Moton, the 135-pound prospect, 6-0, with 5 big wins by way of KO, only 18 years old. Definitely must watch if he's going to be on TV. Last time I saw Kermel Moton, it was on a Pro Box card. Glad to see he's back on another PBC card under another big fight. If you guys are interested in seeing Kermel Moton, he will be taking on Frank Zaldivar probably in the very early prelims. If they do televise it, we'll see, but if not, that's fine. He's probably going to beat Frank Zaldivar pretty easily, but that's one guy I would say keep your eye out for. Other fighters on the prelims will be Yeleni Hernandez, #1 ranked middleweight contender, and Mirko Coelho, definitely another featherweight contender. But today we're going to be focusing on the main card. There's 4 fights on the main card, including our main event up here. We're going to get started from the very bottom. The first fight that will open up the pay-per-view section of the card will be Jesus Ramos Jr. versus Jason Rosario. This will be a middleweight fight, in a 10-round middleweight fight, which is definitely interesting on the surface. These are two guys that had very promising careers. Jesus Ramos is still rising up in the ranks, bouncing back from that loss from Erickson Lubin, while Jason Rosario is trying to find his way back into title contention and put his name back on top in the middleweight division. Let's look at the fighter profiles here. We're going to start with Jesus Ramos. Jesus Ramos, one of my favorite fighters to watch in boxing. 21 wins, 1 loss, no draws, 17 big wins by way of KO. 23 years old, a southpaw, 5'10", with a 72-inch reach. He is from Casa Grande, Arizona. For Jesus Ramos, his last fight was against Johan Gonzalez. It was honestly in T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. He might have been on another big card. I'm not sure which one it was, but I think he might have been on another big card. He was able to dispatch of Johan Gonzalez in the 9th round. Before that, Jesus Ramos had a very promising career ahead of him. He's beating guys like Brian Mendoza, Joseph Spencer, guys like that. Right before he took that loss to Erickson Lubin, he was definitely on his way to being a title contender. That loss to Lubin kind of set him back a little bit. Now, honestly, most people believe that Ramos was a lot closer in that fight than what the judges may have you believe. It was a unanimous decision for Lubin in 2023. Ramos did take some time off, came back against Gonzalez, got an easy knockout. Now he's trying to do the same thing to Jason Rosario. Let's check his fighter profile out now. We should all be familiar with Jason Rosario. 24 wins, 4 losses, 2 draws, 18 big wins by way of knockout. The 29-year-old from the Dominican Republic is 5'11" with a 70-inch reach. He is an orthodox fighter. How can I say this about Jason Rosario? Jason Rosario is a fighter that has had some ups and downs in his career. He's been on the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. Back when he captured the belt against Julian Williams in 2020, he was on top for a while as well. Well, that was until he got knocked out twice, once by Jermell Charlo in 2020, in which he was knocked down with a body shot and was knocked out, and then took a brutal knockout against Erickson Lubin in his very next fight. Jason Rosario then proceeded to fight in the Dominican Republic. I didn't see him no more since then. The next fight I seen from Jason Rosario at that time was the Brian Mendoza fight, and that was in the Armory in Minneapolis, in which he got knocked out again by Brian Mendoza, another contender in that division. He then took another break. He went back to the Dominican Republic, picked up a TKO. The most recent fight that he's been in, I don't think I've watched this fight before, but the most recent one he had was just last year against Jared Hurd, in which he was able to get a draw. Now, Jason Rosario, I've always had my reservations about Jason Rosario. He can be it just depends on what type of Jason you're going to get on any given day. The main problem with Jason Rosario is his weak chin and his inability to endure punches. Jason Rosario has been knocked out multiple times. He did not look all that great against Jared Hurd, and Jared Hurd is definitely washed at this point in his career. And Jesus Ramos punches really, really hard, and I don't know if Jason is going to be able to stand up to that. Jesus Ramos is an aggressive come forward fighter. He's a good body puncher. He sets up his combinations well. If Jason Rosario is not careful, he will go down, which is exactly what I'm predicting for this fight on the card. I'd have Jason Rosario losing this bout by 7th round knockout. I don't think he's going to last long. It might happen earlier than that. I do think Jason Rosario also carries power of his own. The problem is that he sometimes leaves his hands down and his chin can be wide open to hit. And with a guy like Ramos, who's going to be a come forward fighter, he's a decent counter puncher. It's going to be very difficult for Jason Rosario to pick up a win. He punches really hard. I have him losing by knockout in the 7th round. That will end that fight the first fight on the pay-per-view section for me. That's just my prediction, though. I think Jesus Ramos is looking to get back into title contention with a guy beating a former unified champion, a guy who's been on top. I think he'll definitely succeed, and I think Ramos will come out victorious in the first fight of the card. The next fight on our card would be Isaac Cruz, the Pitbull, versus Angel Ferrero. This will be an all-Mexican super lightweight deal in the 140-pound division. This fight is definitely interesting as well. We all know Isaac Cruz, the Pitbull. 26 wins, 3 losses, 1 draw, 18 big wins by way of KO. His alias is the Pitbull, 26 years old, orthodox fighter, 5'4", short guy with a 63-inch reach. He is from Mexico City. Been also a little up and down for Isaac in recent days or in recent fights. He's been on the top of the world before. We all know him from that great bout with Gervonta Davis, in which he made that a very competitive fight. Even though Gervonta was able to come out with a win, the scorecards were a lot closer than what Gervonta would have won back in 2021. Ever since that Gervonta Davis fight, Isaac Cruz has been on a warpath. He demolished Yoriokas Gamboa shortly after that. Eduardo Ramirez stood no chance either. He was demolished as well. He also was able to beat Giovanni Cabrera in 2023 to claim some silver titles by a split decision win. That was the first cracks in the armor that I've seen of Isaac Cruz. But just last year, he was able to dispatch of Rolly Romero pretty easily to claim the 140-pound titles in that division. I think it was the WBC belt, if I'm not mistaken. Rolando Romero, regardless of what you think of him, he's not all that great of a fighter, but he was a champion, and that gave Isaac his first belt in that division. He destroyed Rolando Romero pretty easily. That was on the Tank Frank Martin card last year. Then he kind of hit a low road in his last fight. It was against Jose Valenzuela, or Rayo Valenzuela, if you want to call him that. I think that was on the Terrence Crawford Israel Madrimov card, in which Valenzuela was able to outbox Isaac in that fight and just avoid him all night. Isaac had his moments at times, but it just wasn't enough for him to keep the belt. He lost by split decision. Common fun note, Jose Valenzuela will be back boxing on the Tank Davis card later this year, in March, I think, on the Lamont Roach card. So we'll see how Jose Valenzuela looks. He's probably going to fight Eduardo Puello, a guy who definitely made a lot of people's head turn when he fought. But for Isaac, it's been a little bit of a up and down road. He's a fan favorite fighter because of his aggressive style, and his opponent is definitely going to cater to that. We've seen Angel Ferrero in the press conferences say he's going to want to make this an entertaining fight. The fans are going to love this fight, and they're kind of similar, if I have to say so myself. Angel Ferrero, 23 wins, 2 losses, 2 draws, 18 big wins by way of KO. 26 years old, from Tijuana, Baja, California, Mexico. He's an orthodox fighter, 5'7", with a 70-inch reach, so he's a little bigger than Isaac. It doesn't really seem to matter. It doesn't matter how big or tall Isaac Cruz is. He finds a way to get inside and make fights messy. I don't know much about Angel Ferrero like that. I think I may have watched one fight of his, if I'm not mistaken, but I'm not sure, so don't quote me on that. But from what I have watched, I mean, he is a come forward fighter. He's gonna make things interesting. Mexican fighters always have this pride to them. They like coming forward. They like being warriors in the ring. They like going toe to toe with each other. So it's gonna be an interesting fight for however long it lasts. These fighters are eerily similar. I do think Isaac Cruz will come out with a win. It's only a 10-round fight, so I'm going to give Isaac the stoppage in 5. He's just way too aggressive, man. He's aggressive. He knows how to cut off the ring. He has good routes to the body. He keeps his hands active and moving. I feel like the only way you could slow down Pitbull Cruz is by boxing him like Vryo did, like Tank did, like Giovanni Cabrera did, to make that fight tough. So, you know, unless you're gonna follow that game plan, you're definitely going to have issues with Isaac Cruz. He's going to find his way inside. He's going to keep the fight at close range, and he's going to make it very, very difficult for you. He's going to keep the mental pressure on you, and he's going to make you fight him. And more times than not, you're not going to be able to outfight Isaac Cruz. I'm going to give Cruz the fifth round stoppage. I think he needs to make a statement to put his name back into the elites of 140. So we'll see. But I have Isaac Cruz by fifth round stoppage for our second fight of the pay-per-view. The co-main event, one of the best fights of 2021. This is the rematch. Brandon Figueroa versus Stephen Fulton Jr. II. This fight, the first fight was absolutely masterful. Both fighters were really, really good. A lot has changed since that 2021 fight, but even still, this fight might be a sleeper fight on the card. This might be one of the best fights on the card, considering how the first fight went. And depending on the game plan, this could easily be seen as a 50-50 fight. We're going to get into the fighter profiles now, but I know enough about these two fighters that I really don't need the box rec like that, but I'll bring it up anyway. We're going to start with the WBC interim world featherweight champion, Brandon Figueroa. Figueroa, 25 wins, 1 loss, 1 draw, 19 big wins by way of KO. 28 years old. He is known as the Heartbreaker. He is from Velasco, Texas. 5'9" with a 72-inch reach. We all know what Brandon Figueroa wants to do, and he wants to destroy. That's his mentality. Ever since that loss to Stephen Fulton, he's been on a tear. He's moved up to featherweight, and his power has carried. Able to dispatch Carlos Castro in his first fight back in 2022 at featherweight in the 6th round, then proceeded to get a unanimous decision against a really, really up-and-coming fighter in Mark Magsayo. Able to outpoint him. Jesse Magdaleno didn't fare any better in his fight. He was able to dispatch him in the 9th round. Now he's going against Stephen Fulton for the 2nd time. You know what you're going to get with Brandon Figueroa. Decent chin, great body punching, an aggressive come-forward fighter. A guy that's going to cut off the ring, a guy that's going to make you fight at his pace. And in that first fight with Stephen Fulton, he definitely achieved that. While he was not able to get the win, it was a very, very close fight in my opinion. But at the same time, we have to see a little bit more variety with Brandon Figueroa. I really think Figueroa put his name on the map when he was able to beat Luis Neri back in 2021. But that fight with Stephen Fulton is a staple for him. I think if he's able to throw a little bit more wrinkles into his game plan, maybe not be so one-dimensional, as I do think that's how Stephen Fulton was able to beat him the first time. He was able to take advantage of the fact that, Fulton can fight on the outside or the inside. He can use that speed to kind of outpoint Figueroa when Figueroa just kind of plots forward at times. And it's kind of a similar story in our main event as well. But if Figueroa is able to, get some kind of wrinkles in his game, or show some Stephen Fulton some angles or something like that, he can definitely get a win against Stephen Fulton. As the cool boy Stephen Fulton has been up and down recently. Of course, 22 wins, 1 loss, no draws, 8 wins by way of KO. 30 years old, an orthodox fighter, 5'6" with a 70-inch reach. He's from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I don't have to tell you that. His last fight was against a similar opponent in Carlos Castro, in which he did struggle a bit, but he was able to come out with a split decision. Maybe the fight wasn't as close as people believe, but it definitely was a tough fight. Stephen Fulton has been a very dominant fighter for most of his career in the 122-pound division. Getting rid of Angelo Leo, which is one of his best performances of his career. Able to get that majority decision against Brandon Figueroa. He then proceeded to beat Daniel Roman pretty easily. The one blemish on his career, the one blemish came from one of the best fighters in the sport, in the monster Naoya Inoue, in which he got absolutely obliterated by Naoya Inoue in Japan. I watched that fight. It was heartbreaking. Stephen Fulton was one of my favorite fighters. But now he's moved up. He's at 126. He's going up against Brandon Figueroa for the second time. I am a little worried about his chin, but you know what you're gonna get with Stephen Fulton is that tough Philly-made style. You know, a guy that can fight on the inside, definitely isn't scared to mix it up on the inside. A guy who has really good boxing fundamentals with his footwork, his speed, his jab. Defense can be kind of an issue for Stephen Fulton, but it kind of offsets with his ability to keep distance. But Stephen Fulton, he likes to prove that he can beat you at your own style. And I think the first fight with Brandon Figueroa proved that. You know, there were times in that fight where Fulton would use, you know, his speed and his jab and his boxing ability and his footwork to kind of make Figueroa try to get, you know, make it difficult for Figueroa to get on the inside. But there were times in that fight where Stephen Fulton will, you know, commit to fighting on the inside and mix it up. And I think what gave him the edge in that first fight was he was able to, you know, land the cleaner shots on the inside. While Figueroa threw a lot of punches, not many of them were clean. On top of that, you know, at times Figueroa would be outboxed because, you know, Fulton would go on the outside and he would use his jab and his footwork to make Figueroa miss or make him pay or even just land very clean shots. Now, with that being said, there were moments in that fight where Stephen Fulton tried to get a little bit too confident on the inside and would get caught and would be hurt in that fight. I'm interested to see what the game plan for these fighters are. Again, Fulton didn't look all that great against Castro in his last fight. He did struggle and he was put down in the 5th round. Was able to get up and kind of put something together. Whether it's ring rust or whether it's just a chinny situation, we'll see coming on Saturday. But I'm interested to see the game plan. If Fulton is able to kind of follow the same game plan that he had in the first fight, just, you know, be less aggressive on the inside, kind of keep Figueroa at bay, which might be a little bit impossible. We'll see. I can definitely see him winning, but at the same time, you know, Figueroa with that relentless style is going to force you to fight on the inside, so he'll figure it out. This fight is definitely going to be a hard one to score and a hard one to pick the winner. If I'm leaning towards someone, I think Fulton can pull off a win. I feel like I want to go Fulton by split decision. That's just my opinion. I feel like Fulton was kind of knocking off ring rust in his last fight. If he's able, you know, to use his ability to box to his advantage, use that jab, that footwork, the ability to set up angles and mix it up on the inside from time to time, and just pretty much follow the same game plan that he had in the first fight, land the cleaner punches, make Figueroa miss, block most of Figueroa's punches. As long as he's able to protect his chin and not get sloppy, I feel like he could outpoint Brandon Figueroa. And don't get me wrong, Brandon Figueroa is one of my favorite fighters in the entire sport of boxing. The guy knows how to fight, but I just want to see if Figueroa is going to have that wrinkle in his game or in his fight game to be able to counter some of the, you know, looks that Stephen Fulton is going to show him. So I'm going to go with split decision for Stephen Fulton. I think the cool boy comes out on top. We'll see where he goes from there. But this fight could easily go either way. All right. And in the last fight, the main event, David Benavidez, the Mexican monster, will be taking on the Cuban superstar David Morrell Jr. for the WBC Interim Heavyweight Championship. This is definitely one of the hardest fights to score and to pick a winner because both of these guys are damn good fighters and rising fighters in the sport. I'm a little worried that whoever I pick, it could backfire on me. And I know it's going to get a lot of people into a hissy fit. So we're just going to start with the fighter profiles first. We're going to start with the monster, the Mexican monster, David Benavidez. absolutely stellar in his career. 29 wins, no losses, no draws. 24 big wins by way of KO. 28 years old in the prime of his career, 6'2", with a 74-inch reach. He is an orthodox fighter from Phoenix, Arizona, but he resides in Las Vegas. David Benavidez's last fight was against Oleksandr Gvozdyk, in which he was able to get a unanimous decision win in his 175-pound debut. He is the WBC interim world heavyweight champion of the world. Previously, he was able, and I can just list them off the top of my head. Demetrius Andrade was his last opponent before Gvozdyk, in which he was able to dispatch Demetrius Andrade in the 6th round. Before that, it was Caleb Plant, who fell victim to David Benavidez in a unanimous decision loss. David Benavidez was able to outclass, and just be a monster against Caleb Plant. David Benavidez has a really good resume as of recently. That resume is aging well. Caleb Plant is still one of the top fighters of the sport. Remains to be seen what Demetrius Andrade is going to do, but we'll see. David Benavidez, his style is relentless. It's a come forward style. He's a guy that has a good chin, good body punching, fast hands, power, everything that you would really want in a boxer. David Benavidez is definitely that. He prides himself on being a proud Mexican fighter, and he has that Mexican style to him. Very good body puncher, sets up his combinations very well, able to cut off the ring very well. He forces you to fight his way, and usually when guys fight David Benavidez's way, it doesn't go well for them. It's going to be interesting to see the game plan that David Benavidez has. Well, maybe not, because we know what David Benavidez is going to do. He's going to try to come forward and impose his will on David Morrell. I think the one thing that separates the two fighters clearly is the fact that David Benavidez has way more experience than David Morrell. 29 bouts in his career. He's gone 148 rounds. I think Morrell has only gone like 69, and they haven't been long, and he only has 11 fights to his name. And it's just the experience of fighting different competition. He's seen all types of styles in his career. The slick style of Caleb Plant, the slick style and unorthodox style of Demetrius Andrade, the kind of sitting down on your punches and flat-footed fighter in David Lemieux and Oleksandr Gvozdyk. Anthony Durrell, kind of similar as well. The one thing I would be worried about with David Benavidez is David Morrell is a really good technical fighter. He knows how to set up his shots via angles, via things that makes him unorthodox, and he has a good punch selection. He has power and everything else. The only time I've ever seen David Benavidez down was against Ronald Gavril back in 2017. He then proceeded to beat the crap out of Ronald Gavril in the rematch back in 2018. But we'll see, man. We'll see. I feel like David Benavidez definitely has what it takes to be a pound for pound #1 fighter in boxing. He's looking for big fights in that division. Most likely the winner is going to be able to fight Dimitri Bivol or Arthur Beterbiev, considering how their fight is going to go on February the 22nd. But yeah, definitely the Mexican monster is going to bring a lot on Saturday that Morrell is going to have to be worried about. As for David Morrell, he's no slouch either. I think people are kind of underestimating him because of the lack of experience, because he seems like a cocky fighter. But let me tell you, David Morrell is no joke. Only 11 fights in his career, but all 11, he's won all 11, no loss, no draws, 9 big wins by way of KO, so he has power as well. The 27-year-old from Santa Clara, Cuba. He is a southpaw fighter, 6'1", with a 78-inch reach. Longer arms than David Benavidez, but a little bit shorter, an inch shorter than David Benavidez. That's going to play a role. They're around the same age. David Morrell is probably going to be going into the cusp of his prime. His last fight was against Hot Rod on the, I can't remember. Actually, no, he was a main event fighter, I think. It was against Hot Rod. It wasn't a dominating performance, at least for the standards of David Morrell, but it was a good performance in his 175-pound debut. When you think of David Morrell, you think of a guy that has power, that has athleticism, that uses his footwork very well, that can set up his shots via angles, who's a good power puncher. A southpaw always presents a challenge no matter who you talk to. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see a game plan for David Morrell. He's a great outside fighter. He's definitely a great inside fighter as well. Loves going to the body, loves throwing combinations. He's not a one-punch fighter. He's definitely going to present some real challenges for David Benavidez. And despite what people say, the guy is a very hard puncher, and he's been able to dispatch of mostly everybody in his career. That knockout against Yamaguchi Falcao definitely proved that. Senna Abeko did not prove any more difficult to get rid of for David Morrell, and he fought in the Armory that day. The one thing I'm worried about with David Morrell is the lack of experience. Has he been in with a guy like David Benavidez, who's just relentless? A guy, who it might not take the first punch to be able to hurt Benavidez. It's not going to take one punch. He might take your best punch and come back with something harder. David Benavidez is a monster for a reason. He's going to walk you down. He's going to make the fight difficult. He's going to take the will to fight out of you. And with David Morrell's skill set and lack of experience, is that going to play a role in this fight? I don't know. But David Morrell can do pretty much the same things. I don't think, David Benavidez is going to be too big for him. I think he's definitely going to want to embrace a challenge of fighting on the inside, which is probably going to be a very interesting fight. Morrell's not no slouch either. He definitely is an aggressive fighter as well. He likes moving off his front foot. The thing I'm worried about on David Benavidez's part is he technically sound enough to deal with the technical style of David Morrell? I feel like David Morrell's boxing, techniques are a little bit better than David Benavidez, especially with the footwork. Benavidez is kind of a stand straight up type of fighter, and that jab to the body for David Morrell is going to be there all day. And we know David Morrell likes to use the jab to set up his punches. And we've seen David Benavidez get clocked with punches before. Now he's taken them well in his career, but against a guy that has power like this, I don't know how much David Benavidez is going to want to take clean punches from Morrell. So if you had to ask me to pick a winner, I've changed my opinion so many times this week, but I'm going to edge more towards Benavidez. I'm going to say Benavidez may come out with a split decision win. I don't think he's going to knock out David Morrell. I don't think he's going to dominate David Morrell. I wouldn't be surprised if David Morrell beats David Benavidez because of the technical style that Morrell has. I just think the lack of experience with David Morrell and the overall aggressive style of David Benavidez, a guy that's not going to stop, coming forward, and a guy who can take punches when he needs to, and a guy who hasn't really proven that it's easy to get him up off you. I just feel like David Benavidez will have the edge in this fight. I definitely can see David Morrell, and I probably might change my opinion on fight night as well. But I'm going to lean more towards Benavidez in this fight. I think he might pull off a split decision win. I don't think it's going to be a domination like people think it is. It could be, but I don't think so. I feel like David Benavidez, with his experience, the will to be great, he wants big fights in the year of 2025. We'll see, but I have him kind of edging it out. I think he might be able to, I wouldn't say walk down Morrell, but is going to be able to be aggressive enough later in the fight. Maybe take Morrell into the later rounds, with the mental pressure that he's going to apply. He might create lulls in the action, which Benavidez might be able to take advantage of. So I'm going to go with David Benavidez in this fight by split decision, but I will preface that I'm a really big David Morrell fan, and I would not be surprised by any means if David Morrell does find a way to pull this off on Saturday, February 1st. But that is pretty much it for me. Big fight this week. We always like big fights in the sport of boxing. A great card. There's going to be great fights from beginning to end. I definitely think that this will set up future bouts in the 175-pound division for whoever comes out on top. We'll see what happens in the fight later this month. Later in February with Dmitry Bivol and Arthur Benavidez. They'll probably fight the winner of this fight, so we'll see. And ultimately, the prize for both of these fighters is Canelo Alvarez. So we'll see. Both of these guys are young, talented, powerful. And we don't usually get fights like this where two fighters are in their prime and are that hate each other as well. These two fighters are in their prime. They're powerful. They're young. They're experienced, and they have great athleticism as well. This has all the makings for a fight of the year candidate. I'm excited. I hope you guys are as well. But I'm gonna get up out of here, guys. If you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing to the channel and liking the video, so it helps the channel grow. Make sure you guys hit that notification bell so you get notified every time I drop one of these boxing videos. Gonna try to do some more in the future. If you guys like this type of style, please let me know in the comment section. Also, let me know if you agree or disagree with any of my choices that I made in this video. I would definitely be open for criticism or opinions, so make sure you guys drop your comment in the comment section. As always, guys, thank you for watching. Make sure you guys follow me on social media, and I'm out. Peace.